In a world where magic had long been forgotten, hidden behind the veil of time and secrecy, there existed a place few believed in anymore. A vast, ancient structure buried deep within the Mistwood Forest. It was called the Old Library of Forgotten Spells. This story, dear listener, will carry you gently through the quiet halls of that legendary library, where dusty books hum softly, and forgotten enchantments wait patiently to be read. Now close your eyes, take a deep breath, and allow your mind to drift into the world of whispered tales. The boy named Elric. Elric was 12 years old when he first heard the name the Old Library of Forgotten Spells. He lived in a small village called Harthaven, surrounded by forests and whispering winds. A curious child with amber eyes and a love for bedtime stories, he would often beg his grandfather to tell him tales of ancient times. They say his grandfather whispered one night by the fire, his voice crackling like the embers, that deep within the Mistwood, there's a place where spells sleep, a library not made of bricks and stone, but of memory and magic. Elric's imagination ignited. He pictured towers of books with glowing runes, staircases that floated in midair, and tomes that could whisper their contents to anyone willing to listen. From that moment, Elric knew he had to find it, not because he wanted to become a wizard, but because he believed forgotten things deserved to be remembered. His days became filled with wonder. He would sketch imaginary maps on old parchment, ask elders about the forest, and read every dusty book he could find. Even his dreams were filled with bookshelves stretching into clouds, echoing chants, and lanterns that floated like fireflies. One rainy afternoon, as he stared out the window, he whispered, "One day, I'll find it, even if no one else believes." And somewhere, far away in the depths of Mistwood, a candle flickered to life, the map of glowing ink. On his 13th birthday, Elric climbed into his grandfather's attic in search of old books. Dust hung in the air like golden mist, dancing in the sunlight streaming through a cracked window. Among broken furniture and forgotten keepsakes, he found a wooden chest carved with swirling patterns. Inside, nestled between an old compass and a faded telescope, was a rolled parchment. At first glance, it was blank, but when a sliver of moonlight touched it, lines shimmered across the page in glowing blue ink, delicate as spiderwebs shifting like water. It wasn't just a map, it was alive. The paths twisted slightly when he blinked, and tiny symbols pulsed like beating hearts. The forest was there, Mistwood, drawn in exquisite detail. But near the center, where a cluster of trees formed a perfect circle, was a tiny mark shaped like an open eye. His fingers trembled as he traced it. A faint breeze stirred the attic, though no windows were open. He knew then the library was real, and it was calling him. That night, beneath a full moon, Elric packed a satchel with bread, cheese, a small bottle of water, the glowing map, and a woolen cloak. As the village slumbered, he stepped into the unknown. The trees that whisper names. The Mistwood Forest was unlike any place Elric had ever known. The trees were impossibly tall, their bark etched with ancient sigils and spiral knots. The leaves shimmered faintly under the moonlight, some glowing with soft hues of silver and violet. As he ventured deeper, the air grew thick with enchantment. The wind did not howl or whistle. It whispered, whispers that carried names. Elric, they sighed, carried from tree to tree like a secret. Elric, seeker of forgotten things. He paused beneath a tree with bark like folded parchment. He laid a hand upon it and felt a subtle warmth. The whispering grew clearer. It wasn't just sound, it was memory. The trees were alive, ancient guardians of the forest. That night Elric made camp beneath a canopy of glowing leaves. As he drifted off to sleep, he thought he saw shapes dancing in the distance. Spirits of the forest, perhaps, or dreams made real. The door with no key after 3 days and 3 nights. His feet sore, his satchel lighter. Elric came upon a moss-covered hill. Atop it stood a wall of vines so thick they looked like a curtain. Behind them, almost hidden from view, was a door unlike any he had seen. It had no handle, no hinges, no visible way to open it. Yet something within him stirred, a memory not his own. He reached out and placed his hand upon the wood. The door pulsed with life. The vines receded like water retreating from shore. The door creaked open with a deep, groaning sigh. Inside was darkness, not cold or empty, but warm and a spiral staircase made of obsidian descended into the earth. Lanterns lit themselves as he stepped forward, casting soft golden light on walls lined with forgotten runes. Elric descended slowly, feeling time shift with every step. Minutes stretched like hours. He wasn't just walking down, he was moving between worlds. At last he reached a vast circular chamber filled with bookshelves that reached the ceiling. The air smelled of lavender, parchment, and stardust. This was it, the Old Library of Forgotten Spells. The librarian of shadows. In the heart of the library stood a figure cloaked in shadow and starlight. The librarian, its face was hidden, but its presence was calming, like a lullaby given shape. "You have come," the librarian said in a voice softer than silk. Few still hear the whispers. Elric bowed, instinctively. "I want to remember what the world has forgotten." The librarian regarded him for a long time, then nodded. "Then you may enter." But be warned, each spell you read will become part of you. Not all memories are light. With a flick of its wrist, the shelves began to shift, revealing a path bathed in silver light. The books on these shelves had no titles, only feelings. Some pulsed with warmth, others trembled like frightened birds. "Begin where your heart guides you," said the librarian, then faded into the shadows. The Book of Gentle Rain. The first book Elric touched was bound in blue leather that shimmered like water. Inside, the pages were soft and cool, covered in tiny, flowing script. He read the title, The Song of Gentle Rain. As he traced the runes with his fingers, a hum filled the room. The air thickened, and then it began to rain. Not wet rain, but warm droplets of light that fell in slow motion. Kissing his skin, he closed his eyes. The sound was soothing, like a lullaby sung by clouds. Each droplet told a story, of fields once watered with magic, of children who danced in golden storms. "This is a memory," whispered the librarian, who had silently returned from a time when clouds could sing. Elric stood in the glowing rain for a long time, letting it wash over him. When it stopped, the book closed itself. A single drop remained, resting in his palm. It shimmered, then sank into his skin. The spell had chosen him. The clock that ticks backwards in a forgotten corner of the library. Elric discovered a tall grandfather clock covered in vines. It was silent still. Carved into its base was an inscription. "To remember is to step backward." He whispered the spell aloud. The clock ticked once, then again backward. The room changed. Dust vanished. Books reappeared on shelves. Light flooded the chamber as voices filled the air. Laughter, footsteps, music. He saw echoes of the past. Children in robes. Librarians floating on ladders. Scrolls unfolding mid-air. Time had bent, giving life to memory. Elric watched, wide-eyed, until the spell faded. The clock fell silent again, its hands frozen at a forgotten hour. "I saw them," he whispered. "The ones who came before." "Yes," said the librarian. "And now they remember you." The ink of dreams. One evening, Elric found a desk in the western wing. Upon it sat a bottle of shimmering ink, a feathered quill, and a blank book. He dipped the quill and began to write, not with thought, but with feeling. The words poured out, and with them, images formed above the page. He saw himself flying over oceans on a winged lion, speaking with trees that glowed, touching stars with his fingertips. The librarian appeared. "This ink," they said, "is made from dreamroot, a plant that blooms only in the minds of sleeping souls." Elric smiled. "Then I must be dreaming now. Perhaps you are simply awake in a place where dreams live." He wrote until the ink ran dry. The garden beneath the library, behind a wall of whispering ivy. Elric found a hidden staircase spiraling downward into soft, blue light. It led to a vast garden glowing under an eternal twilight sky. Flowers bloomed with impossible colors, colors that had no name. Trees bore fruit shaped like teardrops and moons. The air was thick with scent of jasmine, honey, and stars. Butterflies with glass wings drifted by. Elric walked among the blooms, reading the names etched onto stone markers beside each plant. Each name was a spell. When he whispered one, "Salanthra," "The garden remembers," said the librarian. Even when we do not, Elric sat among the blossoms and let their songs lull him into a peaceful sleep. The spell of return. After 40 days and 40 nights in the library, Elric knew it was time to leave. But a final spell remained, one that would allow him to return, but only through dreams. The spell of return was kept in a crystal box at the library center. Elric opened it and read the words aloud. He felt a warmth rise in his chest. Then everything began to fade. The books, the garden, the librarian all shimmered like reflections on water. When Elric opened his eyes, he was back in his bed in Harthaven. Morning light streamed through the window. Birds sang. His satchel was by his side, full of blank pages, but in his heart he remembered. And when he dreamed, the library awaited. The whisper lives on. Elric grew older, but the magic never left him. He became a storyteller, a keeper of quiet truths. Children would gather around him at dusk, eyes wide, as he told them tales of rain that sang and flowers that whispered. And sometimes, late at night, those children would dream of halls lined with glowing books, of shadowy librarians, of spells that remembered their names. And the old library would smile, knowing that its whisper had reached another soul. Sleep well, dreamer.